the city in the crowds, and that they now languished in the cells of Traitor's house, awaiting trial. The young man watched as the soldiers moved on. He counted 30 breaths before trusting his life to the rusty drainpipe that snaked down to the street below. Dropping the last few feet, he ducked back into the shadows, glancing up and down the street to make sure nobody was about. The stables backed on to Hammergate, one of the smallest entrances into Highcliffe, traditionally used by the wealthier merchants who wanted to avoid the congested Mucklegate and Kingsgate. It cost a few bronze more to enter Highcliffe via Hammergate, and consequently many of the townhouses in the Tall Quarter were home to Westland's most successful citizens. The man looked at the stables, lips dry with anticipation. There was bound to be a good horse or two to choose from in there. Having scouted Hammergate thoroughly over the last 2 days, he knew exactly what to expect here. Indeed, he'd chanced coming out over the rooftops the previous night to see what the numbers were like. 2 soldiers manned the gate after dark, and they'd remained in their guardhouse for most of this time, stepping out only once to speak with their colleagues as they passed on patrol. The stable block was right beside the gate, making access directly from it and out of Hammergate relatively simple. If the gate was open. If. Scampering across the street, the man hit the shadows on the opposite side, on the corner of the stable block that was hidden from the guardhouse. He glanced round the corner. Low voices and laughter could be heard from behind the glowing window of the guardhouse. Bending low once more, he slipped around the corner and up to the gate. It was pitch black in the gate alcove, but he could just make out the wooden beam that held the gate shut. Taking hold of it, he lifted it from its moorings and slid it back into the wall until one of the gates was free. He held his breath all the while, heart thundering as he listened for the guards, but their easy banter continued unabated. He eased the left-hand gate forward, and it swung smoothly on its hinges to a point that was wide enough for him and a horse to get through. Backing away, the young man disappeared into the stable block. Stalls lined the walls on either side, the gentle sounds of horses moving lightly in their sleep emanating from each of them. He looked quickly into the stalls as he passed, left and right, trying to find a likely candidate. Halfway down the corridor, he did a double take. There was a chestnut-brown thoroughbred, the kind favoured by the cavalry. Stabled up here, it no doubt belonged to a merchant's courier. The decision was too easy. Lifting the latch, he slipped inside. The horse started at the stranger's presence. He stepped up and smoothed his hands over the animal's neck and back, quickly putting it at ease. "Good girl," he whispered, bringing his face round to hers and blowing on her nose. She seemed lively, which would also be good. It had been so long since he'd worked with a horse that he found himself smiling. He reached in front and began to untether her from a stone ring that held her close to the wall. As he was distracted, he didn't notice the rising glow of lamplight behind him. "Who are you?" He turned quickly, but it was too late to hide. An old man stood in the doorway, a hooded lantern held up so he could better see the intruder. "I'm Goodman Wake's courier," he said, thinking quickly. He squinted into the light, unable to fully make out the old man's features. "Just come to check on my horse."
"Never heard of no Goodman Wake, and I'm sure as houses that ain't your mare."
He stepped closer, moving the lantern forward.
"You know there's a curfew on, don't you, boy?"
There was no time for games. He moved quickly, instinctively. Reaching into his cloak, he withdrew his sword, and the stable hand staggered backwards. The old man swung the lantern defensively, and the metal casing caught on the swaddled pommel, tearing free the material that covered it. As the cloth fluttered to the ground, there was no mistaking the lion's head that shone in the lantern light, golden and roaring. The old man opened his mouth to cry out, and the attacker moved fast, swinging the sword round and bashing him across the temple with the pommel. A ragged gash appeared across his brow as he tumbled to the ground. The young man had to work fast. He snatched down a saddle and threw it over the horse's back, hastily tightening the girth. "Sorry," he said to the prone stable hand, as he stepped over him, the horse following and doing likewise. Once out of the stall, he hauled himself up into the saddle with ease. "Stop!"